It's important that you guys eventually take back control over your training. I don't want you guys to be following some crap cookie cutter training program that doesn't take into account these training principles. Without further ado, let's start with principle number one. That's going to be specificity. The main idea behind it is you need to train specific to the physical demands of your sport, or you need to train in a way that's going to help you be better prepared for what you're actually going to come up against in your sport. And this is probably the biggest mistake that I see grappling athletes make, or one of the biggest mistakes that I see grappling athletes make, and is that they're not training specifically to become a better grappler. Their workout program may be fantastic. It may have like all the best exercises and the best tempo and rest periods and the latest science on hypertrophy and all that stuff. It's just not specific to jiu-jitsu, or it's just not specific to wrestling. And if your workouts or if the training that you're doing in the gym isn't specific to what you're going to encounter or experience on the mat, it's a bad training program. And there is a balance to be had with specificity. On one hand, you want to be specific enough to the physical demands of jiu-jitsu, but you don't want to take specificity so far that you do like only Turkish get-ups and weighted hip escapes, which are I would go as far to say that those are pointless exercises if your goal is to build real, brutal grappling strength. Just because the Turkish get-up looks like a technical stand-up does not mean that's going to be a great exercise for making you brutally strong as a grappler. It can be a great warm-up exercise. It can be a great circus lift to kind of like show off some weird feats of strength, which I'm all about. I think that stuff is fun. But when it comes down to training specifically for the physical demands of grappling, it looks like something you would do in grappling, but it's just not going to help you get strong in the way that you would need to in order to perform well on the mat. Specificity can, mean a bunch of different things. Specificity can mean that you're going to train specifically for the type of stress that you're going to encounter on the mat. So like if your elbows are always getting banged up at jiu-jitsu, incorporating some specificity into your training program to strengthen the tissues of your elbows is probably a good idea. Same thing with your neck. Your neck is going to get banged up a ton in jiu-jitsu. So integrating specificity into your training by adding different types of neck exercises, upper back trap exercises is part of training with specificity for the physical demands of your sport. Now, there's other demands and other athletic qualities that you need to perform well, not just be durable enough to train jiu-jitsu and to compete in jiu-jitsu or wrestling, but different athletic qualities that if you have more of those things, it's going to help you perform a lot better, such as isometric and concentric strength. So isometric strength, easy way to think about it is just holding a static position against resistance. When you're on someone's back, you have a seatbelt and a body triangle. Maintaining that position, you're incorporating a lot of isometric strength. Concentric strength is like moving stuff, So like when you're contracting your muscles, so if you're doing a bicep curl and you curl the weight up, the strength that you have to curl and contract your bicep, that would be concentric strength. As you improve in isometric and concentric strength, you have a greater capacity to perform well as a grappler. You think about all the different techniques that you do at jiu-jitsu and all the different scrambles and exchanges that you get into. If you have a greater amount of concentric strength, which really comes down to your ability to produce force, that's only going to make all of the techniques that you already have even more dangerous and more effective. Now, I've talked about it a couple podcasts ago, and it's worth bringing up now, is that there's this misconception by a lot of old grapplers that don't lift. Ironically, none of the newer, younger grapplers think this way, which I think is kind of funny. But there's like this old myth that, getting strong for jiu-jitsu is going to ruin your technique. And that couldn't be farther from the truth. Getting stronger has no correlation to, quote unquote, ruining or degrading your technique. It's only going to enhance whatever quality of technique you already possess. So if you're a white belt and you do a really crappy looking triangle or a really crappy looking armbar, getting stronger isn't going to make that your armbar better or worse. It's just going to allow you to apply more force with the technique that you already have. However, if you do have pretty good armbar finishing mechanics, if you do have a great triangle choke, getting stronger is only going to make that even more dangerous and even more effective. And that's where concentric strength is a really important physical quality to have as a grappler. Now, the other thing that's important to look at is isometric strength. So basically your ability to hold a position against resistance. This is a lot more obvious in jiu-jitsu and really any grappling sport because of just the nature of grappling. You're fighting for position. Once you get to a position, you don't want to give up that position. So you're often like holding strong or holding certain frames. The more that you can use your isometric strength, again, it's not going to make your technique worse. It's not going to make your technique, quote unquote, better. It's just going to enhance whatever quality of technique you already possess. Now, when it comes to training with specificity, we do want to have our workouts be specific to the physical demands that we encounter as grapplers, but we also want to have some, I almost think of it, and it's kind of an oxymoron, this idea of general specificity. It's a good idea to build general strength. It's a good idea to build general explosiveness and power, general conditioning. However, we don't want to go so far on the general side of things that we get far away from what is actually going to be required of us as grapplers on the mat. And then we also don't want to lean so hard into specificity that we miss out on some of the general benefits or the general strength, general conditioning, and things like that. On either end of the spectrum, general would be like only doing CrossFit workouts. I think CrossFit's great. I don't think it's the greatest workout program ever. I think there's a lot of benefits. I also think that CrossFit presents a lot of issues, especially if you don't have a good coach. But where CrossFit starts to fail for grapplers is that if you're a grappling athlete and you just go to your local CrossFit box and do the workout of the day, that's great for building general work capacity, general conditioning, general strength. However, those workouts are pretty far away from the specific physical demands and the specific athletic abilities you need as a grappler. So there does need to be a good balance where you're not so specific to where you're only doing Turkish get-ups and weighted hip escapes, but you also don't want to go so general on the other end where you're only doing CrossFit workouts or you're training like a bodybuilder and it has nothing to do with specificity for jiu-jitsu or for wrestling. That is the first main principle. Your training program, your workout plan, whatever you're doing, whether you're following one of my training programs, whether you're building your own training program, it needs to be specific to the physical demands that you're going to encounter as a grappling athlete, or at the very least, just specific to whatever your training goals are. If your goal is to get as strong as possible, your training program should not consist of running for 2 hours every single day. That's not specific to the training goal. If your goal is to prep for a jiu-jitsu competition, your workouts should not consist of only doing squat, bench, deadlift for 1 rep maxes like you're going to step on a powerlifting platform. That is not specific enough for the training goal. It's not specific enough to the physical demands of a grappling athlete.